Short division with decimals. We previously dealt with short division in a previous video, and now we're dealing with decimals. So let's look at this first question. 3.48, and we're dividing it by 4. Now, we might think, it doesn't make much sense, why would we do this? But if we think of money, if this was £3.48, money always has 2 decimals. It seems to make more sense that we could get £3.48 and we could share it between 4 people. So let's see what we'd get. We're going to follow the same rules as we have in the previous video about short division. These rules do not change down the bottom. Let's try it. How many 4s go into 3? How many 4s are there in 3? And there are none, are there? So what do? We put a 0, make sure it's lined up, and we have to underline. This is our first rule here, isn't it? Now, how are we going to do how many 4s there are in 3.4? Doesn't seem to make much sense, or it doesn't make it easy to do. So we really need to have another rule. When there's a decimal, we need to ignore it until the end. So how many 4s are there in 34? And there are 8. 4 times 8 is 32. And there is 2 left over, so we're going to put that over here. Now how many 4s are there in 28? And that is 7. Now our answer is not 87, because we now need to put our decimal back in. And just like column addition, we should be used to doing this with column addition, we have to just line up that decimal. So it's going to go in here. So our answer is going to be 0.87. Be careful, because yes, we line up the decimal with division and short division, but we don't line up the decimal when we're doing the written method for short multiplication or long multiplication. Multiplication is special. Okay, so if we're having £3.48 shared between 4 people, each person would get 87p. That seems to make more sense now. What about this one? Now, it doesn't have any decimal anywhere at the moment, but let's see if we need to put a decimal in somewhere later. Let's try this out. How many 4s are there in 2? You can't do it. What do we do then? We underline it. We join it together to make it a bigger number. How many 4s are there in 24? There is 6. Now what do we do? How many 4s are there in 3? Now, you can't get a 4. You can't get a group of 4 out of 3. So we're going to have to put a 0 here, aren't we? Well, what are we going to do? Because we haven't been able to do that. Well, according to our rule, we would underline, but there's nothing here to underline it with. And this is where we're allowed to put in a decimal and a 0. Because any number that's whole, and we put a 0.0 on the end, it is still exactly the same number. We haven't changed the value of the units, the tens, the hundreds. We haven't even added any tenths. There were no tenths here before, there's still 0 tenths. But because we're making this longer now, let's extend this line. You may want to do the same when you're doing your written method. Now, we can underline. So how many 4s go into 3? Can't do it. So what do? We put a 0 and we underline. Now remember, we ignore the decimal point until the very end. So how many 4s are in 30? And there are 7. 4 times 7 is 28. Now we have a leftover 2. But there's nothing here to put the 2 next to. And we don't want to put remainder 2. So we can put another 0 here. The reason is because we're now in the hundreds. Were there any hundreds here before? No, there was nothing. Are there any hundreds here now? No, there's still 0. So now we can put our remainder, our leftover bit. 4 times 7 was 28, but remember we had 30 we were dividing, so the leftover is 2. So we put that here. and we can do 4 into 20. How many 4s are in 20? There are 5. Now, our last step is to put the decimal point in. What do? We have to line it up. So we put the decimal in here, and our answer is 60.75. Now let's try a different one. Now children often get confused when you have a question like this because it doesn't seem to make much sense. Maybe they'll even swap them around. Because if we try this, let's see what a child might do that's not sure how to do this. How many 4s are in 3? Can't do it, so the answer is 0. They might even realise, okay, it's 0, but you know what, that's left over because we haven't been able to divide it. So the answer is 0 remainder 3. Which is sort of right, but we want to be able to divide this. So we can do it, but we have to use decimals. So let's go back. Now we know we can't get any 4s out of 3. So that 3 is a leftover. We're not going to put remainder 3. Instead, we're going to do the little trick of putting the decimal point and a 0. Because we know it's still the same number. 3 is the same as 3.0. Now we can put our remainder 3, the 3 that we couldn't divide, we can put it here next to the 0. Now how many 4s are in 30? Now, we could do that, but we also could have done something else. And this is what we did with the previous short division. Let's just try this again without putting the 3 there. How many 4s are in 3? 0. If we follow the rule, we really should underline it, and this is the easiest way. So now how many 4s are in 30? Remember, we ignore the decimal point, and there is 7. Because 4 times 7 is 28. We have 2 left over. So we'll add another 0 so that we can put the 2 next to that. Now, how many 4s are there in 20? And there is 5. And it works out perfectly. There is nothing left over after that. What's the last thing we need to do? We need to put in our decimal point. So we line it up, just like we have before. Our answer is 0.75. Now, because this is a bit of a strange question, maybe for some people, let's think about how this would work in real life. We could have 3 pounds, couldn't we? And we might need to share that between 4 people. And each person would then get 75p. Now let's look at the last type of question. Let's do it the normal way we've been doing it. How many 7s are there in 2? Can't do it. So what do? Underline. How many 7s are in 26? Well, we know there are 3 7s which make 21, but then there's 5 left over. Where are we going to put it? Well, we need to add a decimal, put the 0. Remember, we haven't changed the number. 26 is the same as 26.0, but now we can put that remainder of 5 here. How many 7s are there in 50? There is 7. 7 7s are 49. That means there's 1 left over. We need somewhere to put it, so we need to add another 0. And that leftover 1 we can put there. How many 7s are there in 10? There is 1. But then there is 3 left over, because 7 times 1 is 7. We're trying to divide 10, so there is 3 left over. Where are we going to put that? We need to add another 0. Now we can put 3 there. How many 7s are in 30? There are 4, because 4 times 7 is 28. Now the problem is that we've gone up to 3 decimal places, and we still have a remainder. We have a remainder of 2. So what are we going to do now? Well, we don't want to go more than 2 or 3 decimal places. That is enough, especially for primary school. But We need to put our decimal point in. We need to line it up. So let's line it up. And the decimal point will go here. And we don't really need that remainder anymore because we've really gone up to 3 decimal places. That's enough. So it would be fine to write your answer as 3.714.